What's up guys, Handish here, and today I wanted to talk about PvP in Rise of Iron and just kind of spill some thoughts about everything that's coming up. And you know, I think it's a super exciting time for the Crucible coming forward with Rise of Iron, and this is probably going to be the biggest PvP update on the whole since the launch of Destiny. In terms of content and usability of content, as well as replayability of content, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in Rise of Iron. Of course, we do have all of the other stuff, the raid, the story, the strikes and quests, which I'm super excited for. This video will be about PvP, but firstly, I wanted to talk briefly and recap on the additions that we've seen to the Crucible throughout Destiny's lifecycle so far. So we've had new maps in various expansions. The first real big thing that we had was Trials of Osiris in the House of Wolves. This was a pretty big deal because it was the first time you had a super competitive mode that could also earn you gear. You know, it appealed to a lot of people. If we forward to the Taken King though, we had the new mode Rift. We also had 6, I believe, new maps for the Crucible. Granted, this is more either way than Rise of Iron's 3 or 4 maps if you're on PlayStation, but we're going to be left with a pretty healthy number of PvP maps in the game overall, which is obviously good. The Taken King did bring weekly bounties and more PvP quests, but I feel like Rise of Iron is really going a good way beyond what other expansions have done for PvP in the game, and equally as importantly, they're taking what's good in the game, keeping it in, or making it much better. So obviously there's going to be more content after Rise of Iron than there's ever been for the Crucible. So we have the new mode Supremacy, which is always good. I believe this is the 3rd mode that we've had added to PvP if you count Elimination and Rift as well. There's always going to be a change of pace for the new mode, and this is going to be pretty interesting because it does kind of what Clash does, but of course being able to engage and collect crests is going to change how you play as well as how you think about teamwork. So that will be really interesting, and I'm interested to see, you know, how it actually plays and feels in the Crucible, especially since we'll see it in the first return of Iron Banner after the Rise of Iron. And while we're on the subject of Iron Banner, the event is coming back, but I feel like this is going to be way more exciting than the returns of previous Iron Banners. So in the Taken King we did have new weapons, but they were remodeled or reworked weapons, which is obviously less exciting. We did see some fantastic roles and archetypes throughout the Taken King, but with Rise of Iron we're getting new Iron Banner gear, not remodeled stuff, but brand new stuff, and these weapons look absolutely awesome. I can't wait to see the archetypes and the types of roles that we'll see as well. And let's not forget that ornaments are also a thing, and if we can earn these through Iron Banner, they're going to add quite a lot of longevity to the event potentially throughout the year, giving you more reason to play. You know, it'll take you longer to get the stuff. And there's also going to be more of a connection between Iron Banner and our understanding of the event and the story as well. So I feel like it's going to be a more well-purposed activity in the world, which kind of plays into the fantasy of the game more than it did previously. So that's really awesome. We're going to have a number of quality of life changes as well. So we'll have like the removal of XP buffs through class items and shaders, and the changes to workload required to hit higher ranks, which is good because, you know, I feel like hardcore players, if they hit higher ranks a little bit quicker, they'll go on other characters and, you know, get more loot. But if you're a less hardcore player, then it's going to be, you know, equally as good because you don't have to spend as much time to get good stuff. And seeing as, you know, we have Trials of Osiris and we're also going to have private matches, that's kind of the hardcore side of PvP I feel is kind of covered. So they really need to, you know, ensure, which I feel like they have been doing throughout the Taken King, that Iron Banner is something that everyone can access and, you know, get some level of satisfaction from. That's an important thing, and it feels like that's the direction they're going. So on the whole, this is going to be a pretty big deal, and it's going to be very important to replayability over the next year. So I hope that they absolutely nail it. Artifacts are going to be very interesting for PvP as well. We've heard about negating damage over time effects and swapping supercharges for insane grenade or melee buffs. This is a new layer of complexity for the Crucible, and I can't wait to see what kind of builds people come up with as well. That's going to be really exciting and kind of fills that spot where we're not getting new subclasses as well. And, you know, since we have that number of subclasses, then we're adding these artifacts. You know, it's going to be a pretty interesting thing, and it could become like a standard thing that you equip when you see someone else playing a certain way. You know, this is what I go to avoid this. Or if you're playing skirmish or even doubles modes, they can become even more interesting, potentially creating, you know, brand new playstyles or kind of rule systems, especially when you think about private matches. Whichever way you look at it, it creates options, and people will certainly seek to use this stuff in interesting ways. And while we're talking about PvP, I didn't really speak about private matches just yet, so this is of course pretty massive in terms of both an addition to the game and in terms of the response from the community as well. Of course, there are many different things that you can actually do with this. So obviously sweats or scrims, and by extension tournaments, are actually going to be something you can set up. Stemming from this, we're already seeing the competitive options inside of Destiny expand, which is pretty epic. There's a sizable competitive audience for this game which has never really had the appropriate tools, and finally it's going to be here. But outside of, you know, just the competitive thing, we've got, you know, the fun factor. You can play against your friends, you can come up with your own modes, or, well, come up with your own rules, I suppose, more than anything. But you're going to be able to play around in the Crucible a lot more. Inside of the matches themselves, you could just go out and check PvP maps for yourself, practice traversing certain areas of the map, memorize the sightlines, or just explore, because of course Destiny is a pretty gorgeous game. And then there's also the content creation side. Players are going to be able to stage certain things for machinimas, produce cinematic elements for montages. Of course, you can combine this with being able to go hoodless and the new ornaments or artifacts that give you those kind of film effects as well, which is going to be really interesting. And then of course there's all of the technical PvP stuff, so being able to create content about maps or weapons with controlled gameplay demonstrations is pretty exciting, or just practicing that stuff for yourself. This is personally what I'm the most excited for. But either way, there are a lot of kind of sections of the audience which can enjoy different things inside of private matches, and if you combine the fact that this is happening with, you know, new maps and new gear, having new gear and weapons, of course, changes the way that PvP plays and kind of refreshes the Crucible. New ways to spec classes heavily in certain directions, or to change, you know, certain elements of the sandbox with artifacts. We have new modes with a vastly improved Iron Banner as well. Plus, for the first time in way over a year, we have a total refresh on Trials of Osiris gear, not remodeled gear. Which I'm pretty excited for. And this is, you know, it's just huge for the Crucible. There's so much stuff, which is why I feel this is collectively the most PvP content, the most PvP focus that we've ever seen in the game. And of course, PvP is a big endgame thing. It's something that a lot of players end up spending most of their time doing later on in the game after, you know, a content release. And a couple of final things. If there's any balancing, you know, weapons, classes that we might see before Rise of Iron, that would be really interesting. This may or may not happen. They're not kind of speaking about it in the same way as other expansions. Either way, we'll see. But we do have SRL, which is set to come back in December. That's confirmed. We're going to have new maps and gear, and they're saying that they're kind of thinking about the modes and the way it plays and the way that it works in general. So they're working on it. Personally, I think if that content works as planned, then they're probably going to aim to have more SRL events more regularly, perhaps a bi-monthly event, or maybe at least once every quarter of the year. And they know that we need more content. We know they're revamping the event. I don't think that they'd spend time and then end up in a place where that content can't return somewhat regularly, especially with the feedback we've had over the last year. I think we'll see it a lot more over the next year coming up. So on the whole, events and just the Crucible, it's massive. It's really super awesome. I'm hyped for everything that's coming in Rise of Iron. There's people who play a lot more Crucible than PvE content, and I feel like on the whole this is going to be the most satisfying expansion for them. So anyway guys, these are my thoughts on the Crucible. It's a very exciting time for Destiny. Let me know down below how you feel about the various things that they're adding to the Crucible, what you're excited for. That'd be really interesting to read. But if you have enjoyed the video, a like is always appreciated down below. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe. I will cover everything relating to Destiny and Rise of Iron right here. But for now, you guys have an awesome day.